The Progressive Era from 1890 to 1920 was a period in which reformers, politicians, journalists, and concerned citizens attempted to right the wrongs of industrialization. Exploited workers, the filthy conditions of the meat packing industry, immigrant slums, and political corruption in the form of political bosses would be exposed by journalists known as muckrakers. It would be a time of positive change and political action that would better serve the American people. Muckrakers were journalists who exposed corruption in the United States. Upton Sinclair, in his book The Jungle, exposed the terrible and unclean working conditions in the Chicago meatpacking industry. This would lead to political action, bringing more sanitary and safer working conditions to the meatpacking industry. The FDA, or Food and Drug Administration, would be created to protect Americans from unsafe food and drugs and also monitor false advertising claims regarding food and medicine. In order to combat monopolies, Teddy Roosevelt, a progressive president at the time, used the Sherman Antitrust Act to break up harmful monopolies that were stifling competition and using illegal business tactics to make money. Roosevelt believed that corporations were good for America, but bad corporations in the form of trusts or monopolies needed to be broken up or eliminated entirely. Initiative, referendum, and recall. In order for U.S. citizens to have a greater voice in government and more direct involvement in the democratic process, initiative, referendum, and reform were used. Americans could now have more influence over politicians and laws that they did not like or approve of. Jane Addams set out to aid needy immigrants in Chicago at a mansion that she had rented known as the Hull House. It opened as a kindergarten, but soon expanded to include a day nursery, an infancy care center, and eventually, as the campus grew into more buildings, a gymnasium, shops, housing for children, and playgrounds would emerge as other buildings were added. W.E.B. Du Bois would emerge as a leader among blacks and demanded that all blacks be given equality immediately, the same as whites. The NAACP would be organized with the help of Du Bois to help secure full legal rights among minorities. Political machines or machine politics were common during this time. Corrupt political bosses like Boss Tweed from New York would use their influence of power to become wealthy and took advantage of the people they were supposed to help. Immigrants were one of the main reasons political machines came to power. As cities grew, the local government did not have the resources to help keep up with this growing population. Political bosses and their henchmen would step in and approach immigrants new to the country, promising to find them food, jobs, and shelter in exchange for their votes. Because of the lack of political concern by the major parties for groups of people like farmers, third parties were formed as a way to represent those whose voices were not heard by the major parties, the Democrats and the Republicans. The result would be that the major parties would be influenced by the minor parties and eventually adopt those issues.